so you're going to hang. We'll try to get all the good stuff early then for you. So Elon, you're running the 100K.
Yeah.
You know, the course is a little modified.
A little different, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't take it back to like the first version, the double on the left.
Yeah. You'll
Way too cool.
so you may have a tough dilemma with your UTMB spot then.
In terms of the height and
Well, in terms of like if you have a good day.
top two.
But you know, all you have to be is top 10.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that.
Good.
That would be great.
All right. We're going to start. Sorry, we're late starting this thing.
Let's go top 10.
Welcome to our Friday night special here. We have out here. Happy Topher called me last week. Hey, Polettis are in. Yeah. Yes. So we made that happen, and thank you everybody for showing up. And because introductions are required, but I'm sure everybody knows who's here. So Topher Gaylor, legend in Marin and at the UTMB scene and all things known ultra. And I'm going to Americanize Catherine Poletti and Michel Poletti, the founders of UTMB, and which was now 20 years ago. Was it 2003 was the first one?
Yes.
And Topher and Michel both ran in the first one, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But you run faster than me.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, the first year there was only like 100 finishers?
Less, 67, I think.
And now there's 2,500 starters and about how many finishers? 2,000? 1,500?
60%.
60% finished. Okay, so we'll say 1,500 rounded up. So that's a pretty good, in 20 years to go from 50 to 1,500, huh?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could start more if the course can handle it. Or the aid station. All right, so Topher's going to ask the questions tonight, and we'll about 40 minutes. Well, I'm sure there'll be some questions from the crowd here. And if there's anybody in the chat, I will monitor the YouTube live chat, and if there's any good questions out there, only good questions, I will transmit those up to the front here. So
Awesome.
take it away.
Thank you, Ted. Thanks for hosting us all tonight. It's this is a cool night for us. So, you know, to sort of have a chat with Catherine and Michel, you know, our relationship, as Ted mentioned, our relationship goes back 20 years to before UTMB even existed. And Kim and I were living in Europe. I was working for the North Face, and I had been in love with 100-mile running and was committed to finding a 100-mile race that inspired me the same way Western States had inspired me. I'd run Western States a few times, and I couldn't find a 100-mile trail race. And I finally discovered this race in Chamonix that popped up on a website, and it was 100 miles, literally circumnavigating the rooftop of Europe. And if anyone who's been to Chamonix here, okay? Few hands in the audience been to Chamonix. If you've been to Chamonix, Chamonix sits at just around 1,000 meters, right? And the top of Europe's at 4,800 meters, or 3,000 feet, just under 16,000 feet. And that's more relief than sitting at the base camp of Everest looking up the summit of Everest. So, you know, it's one of these places you go to and you just go, wow, this is an incredible amphitheater to go experience trail running. And we discovered this race. And at the time I had told a marketing manager in France that I was going to run this race, and she said, we have to get the North Face involved, like right now. And I said, I don't want to push you because, you know, you guys got to make your own decisions, you know. And And she reached out, Carla, right? Carla reached out, and she set up a meeting. But Kim and I were doing a training run. We had created from year zero a discipline of doing the entire course in 3 days. And we said, well, we can meet Catherine and Michel in Chamonix on day 2 with our course recon. And that's how we met, right?
Absolutely, it was really crazy. And I remember when Carla, she asked me, you have to go on the show of the Marathon du Mont-Blanc. It was the end of June, and because the North Face want to meet you, okay? And I didn't know this brand, absolutely not. And I look and I say, what they want? It's to go on the Everest with bag and some very hot stuff to go in very high mountain. They say, but we don't go on the top of the Mont Blanc, we just turn around. So maybe we don't need this kind of stuff. And I say, okay, but I will go. And at this moment, I saw a girl, very enthusiastic. It was crazy. And I say, that's good. It may be a very good partner because they want. And it was a moment when I had a choice because we had some other discussion. And finally, because I was new in this kind of thing, I say, but you know, I began some discussion with another brand, so maybe I have to say to them that to be fair, and wait, I will give you the answer in a few moments. And the other guy didn't believe me that what I said. It was proposed was variety, and because of that, I say, okay, I will choose the North Face, and it was the beginning of a
Maybe it helped. We had a little drink together in Chamonix on day 2, but it was a natural bond. I would say it was a pretty special bond that was created and formed just a late evening in July of 2003, and it's I think it's a relationship that's grown over 20 years, not just around the race and the UTMB World Series now, but around our families getting to know each other. And I think all of us that are in the trail running community know that, like, you know, that experience of going to a trail running event is always about making those connections and making those bonds. And whether that be with other trail runners or whether that be with the race organizers, that's certainly the way we built the race. And take us back, because, you know, this is a cool year. It's the 20-year anniversary for UTMB, right? And a lot has changed from that first year.
We too.
But tell us just about, you know, tell us about the vision to put on this race, because nothing like it had ever happened. And I think sort of the origin story of, one, how you thought about even putting the race on and how it came, because tell us about how the race was formed.
Just a question of running, trail running and runner. I was runner. Catherine was crewing me, and we discovered trail running. Trail running came in France just in 1995. We had, before that, we had mountain running. In France, we make a difference between mountain running, which is short and fast, and trail running, with more enjoying a journey all the day. And this kind of running came in France just with Les Templiers. After that, the owner of Les Templiers spent a couple of months here in the US to look at the Leadville and the Western States. And when they came back in France, they made the decision to create Les Templiers. still a big event in France. And I discovered trail running in 5 years later, in 2000. And we spent with Catherine, 3 years, 2000, 2001, 2002, to go everywhere we could to enjoy this new way, this new sport. And quite each time when we came back at home, we are living in Chamonix, we were saying, wow, it could be amazing to have a race all around the Mont Blanc. But we are too busy. We were managing an IT company, and so it was not question to. We had no time. But at the same time, there was a race all around Mont Blanc in the 90s in 7 stages. A relay race of 7 kilometers.
When did that start, the relay race? And was it on the trails or was it on the roads?
It was parts of the trails, because there are some parts where you cannot go from France to Italy on roads, but you can stay in Italy on Italian side or on French
So
side.
it was a relay. It was a relay
Yes,
race.
It was a relay, and as often as possible it was on road because it was faster. And we had a big fire in 1999 in the Tunnel du Mont-Blanc, the tunnel who make the link between Chamonix and Courmayeur, France and Italy. And the tunnel stayed closed for 3 years, and so this race has not been able to be organized for 3 years. And in 2002, when the tunnel reopened, the organizer tried to reorganize this race and failed. He got just 2 teams, and so he cancelled the race. And we were part of a running club in Chamonix, and the president of the running club, René Bachelard,
Okay.
was mad to have this race cancelled, because he said, okay, it was a nice race, creating a link between France, Italy and Switzerland, and we are really attached to this symbol. And so he was mad with this. I met with René 1 time, 2 times, 3 times in the streets of Chamonix in September 2002. And each time he was crazy, saying, we are crazy, yeah, we need to do something. And so at the end of the day, we said, okay, we stopped to speak of this in the street, and we organized a meeting. And we organized at the end of September 2002 a meeting with 9 people: Catherine, René, Jean-Claude, that you knew very well, me and 5 other guys. And we made the decision to create this race. It was not for business purpose, it was just for passion. Catherine was available. She left the company, the IT company, just a few months before, and so she jumped in the organization since the first day.
I think I died.
And
it started like this, just for passion, and not for business purpose.
so the way every ultra trail race I've ever been to has started. The origins of UTMB started the same way, with a crazy idea and a vision and a lot of people that wanted to make it a reality. That first year, was a really unique year, because I think the weather was sort of tough that first year, and you had to make some course changes. There were just under 700 starters that year.
Yeah.
And the first year UTMB, if I recall, there was, because we didn't know whether it was possible to complete the full loop of the Mont Blanc, there was the ability for a runner to get a designated sort of finish, like climbing a mountain, if they just made it to Courmayeur or just made it to Champay. Is that right?
Yes, we proposed to have a free race in one.
So you could make, if you
promotion, And I remember that a lot of runners, because as you said, it was the first rainy day after all the summer.
Super hot. It was a really
super
hot summer.
And super
Yeah.
hot and super dry.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of very thin stuff, and that made the trails really sweepy, and it was quite crazy to run and.
Like surfing down the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
It was greasy out there that year.
Yes, and I know a lot of runners who were crazy after because they decided to stop in Courmayeur or in Champais, and they regret.
So that first year,
Really,
so that first year was a 10% finishing rate, right?
In 7.
10% finishing rate
but you know, I think.
out of 700, just 67,
Yes.
67 finishers,
But
right?
you know, I think if we didn't propose this possibility to stop at this at
Maybe
Courmayeur,
there would have been more finishers.
I really think there will be more.
Yeah, but at the same time, the weather was really, really bad.
It was, yeah, it was, I remember some snow and difficulty going over Col de la Seine, and also you had originally had the race going to Croix de Bonhomme, which is the first big climb out of Lake Contamine, and that's just about mile 25 or 45K into the race. And you altered the course and actually had the course go down to Les Chapeaux,
Exactly.
which was a change we made just the day before. And I think one thing that's really interesting with the UTMB, you know, the UTMB since the very first year has always been known for making small adjustments to the course or to the start time, because Mother Nature rules in around the Mont Blanc, and you have to respect Mother Nature, and that was the case that first year.
Exactly.
We need to respect the nature, and we need also to respect the little villages. And sometimes they prefer we cross the village at this hour and not at this one. So we try to make everybody happy. It's the first.
It's not
goal,
easy. Not easy
I
when you're
say
going through 3
my-
countries
our
and 9
job is
villages.
to try to make everybody happy.
What I think one of the things that people don't know about you two is your music background. And you know, prior to the UTMB, being the co-founders of UTMB, you ran a music store in Chamonix, and you also have family that are like musicians as well, right? But anyone, you know, I think it's a fascinating background about you two that maybe people don't know, but every human who's ever been to any of the UTMB races, anywhere, feels the energy, literally, you know, the tingling in your fingers, the tingling in your ears from just the emotion that you're able to create through music and the environment. But tell us about like that vision of pairing the running experience with music and how maybe your background as music store owners played into that.
Yeah, but everybody knows that I am not really a runner, and not at all, because for many reasons. I come from a family where everybody was a musician. My brothers are violinists, professional violinists in the Opéra de Paris and also in the Opéra de Nancy. My sister, who passed away, but she was a teacher of flute. My mother was a violoncello.
Cello,
She
cello,
played
yep.
cello. And my father was a singer. He sings in classical as a tenor. And
Wow.
I was a pianist. And I grew like that. I met Michel when we were in the university and in Grenoble, in an IT school. And then I jumped in Chamonix because it was a very beautiful place and I loved him. So because of that, and he tried to make me a sport, but it was really crazy. He couldn't. And by the way, I have a very big problem of health. Nobody knows, but not very problem with my bones and my joints. So when we began, I supported Michel when he ran. I was on the side of a trail, and often I say to him, you know, Michel, I know more people than you in the trail running because you know the runners who run with the same speed than you, but I know all the ones who are before you also. And I know also the husbands or wives or friends who are just like me, because we need to spend a lot of time to wait for you. And so I know many people. And when we had this meeting to decide that we will do it, it was crazy because we were 9 and 8 of them, they say, Michel first, I like to organize it, but I want to run it. And then the others say, I want to organize it, but also I want to run it. And all the eyes were on myself, and they say, you don't.
You will be the race director.
Keep the house okay, and we will go to run. So, and I love that, so I continue with a big pleasure. But the first year, there will be, I feel I missed something, and I say to Michel, we need to do something because it's a very great adventure, and we need to make a scenery, I don't know, maybe to work about the drama or something like that. And with the music and the stuff, it may be good. And we choose together the music because 20 years, during 20 years we had a store of record, and it was easier to remind that there is a lot of music. We listen a lot, and once we listened together the Evangelist, and Michel said, "Oh,
That's
beautiful.
it. That's the one. You knew
Yeah.
that was the one.
That's
That's the one.
So is
the
that
one."
like in your house? You're doing that together, just listening to
But
music
you know,
and
all the time. I work my playlist all the time. Each year I go, I say, oh, that's good. Maybe it's been maybe useful. Also during the
Thanksgiving.
party of Thanksgiving, and I note and I buy, so that's okay. And I look at this part and I say, what a crazy title for this music. Conquest the Paradise. It's exactly what we need.
That's the name of the. So that is the name of the song, right?
It's
Conquest
the
of
name of the
Paradise.
song, and it's the music of a film, 1492, about Christophe Colomb. And I thought there is something which seems very clever, big link between this music and the UTMB. So it was the beginning.
A true adventure of self-discovery.
And
Yeah.
once I asked Topher, do you think I can change the music for the 10th anniversary? He said, no way.
That's true. That's true. Anyone that's lined up at the start of UTMB, I mean, it's still an incredible, an incredibly emotional experience. And I think, you did a really great job of explaining how your role developed as race director, but more than anything, how you brought your past life in music and using both music to bring, and the sense of adventure to bring the community together. And not just the community of Chamonix, but the communities now that are the 10 adjoining villages. But it really, it was this magnetism of the event that really ignited the fire of UTMB. And part of that was just the emotion that any runner had, and not just the runners, spectators, volunteers, everyone just wanted to, they were just consumed with that energy, which was, I think, in large part to sort of the vision you both brought, and Catherine, you brought to not just the runner experience, but the spectating experience and that interaction between the two.
But I think it's helped me not to be a runner, because now I know also what is the point of view of the other one. I was a volunteer on the Marathon du Mont-Blanc. I understand that if you are unable to run, unable to take part in an event from one side, there is maybe another one you'd be happy to be part of the event. And I think it helped me to know that and to be with a very good runner, because like that he could take care of the sport size of the adventure, and I was unable to do that, and I could really take care of the other thing. The things we have, and with Michel, often we sometimes are not in the good, in the same vision, but in the same time we are so complementary that it's one of the key of a success.
Yeah, it's a great balance that the two of you have, and I was always inspired by how Michel and I would often go and run in the mountains together on the course, and snow up to our thighs one year. I think Kim was just ahead of us with another group going over the Col de Bonhomme in training, thinking, oh my God. But it's those moments that you share the mountains together that really create those lifelong bonds. I mean, we are going to spend a few days together now to catch up on 20 years, but I have to fast forward us because there's a lot that's gone on in the 20 years.
Yes, if I may.
Yeah.
There's one thing you have not said, is the place, your place in 2003.
Oh, so 2003, I finished second, tied at second place with Brandon Zabrowski, behind a Sherpa from Nepal named Awa.
And the thing is that we are still waiting for an American male to win the UTMB.
That's true.
You are still the best American male to have finished the UTMB.
It hasn't been without trying with a lot of American males. We've got stories about bringing American males over to try to crack the code with UTMB. I mean, I've had the privilege to run 10 UTMBs starts and 3 top 10 finishes, and that first one obviously is the most special to me because it was the most unknown, and it was fierce in terms of it was as tough of a year weather-wise as some of the toughest years. But the relationships that all of us forge, whether it's with our local events or with the community around the UTMB. I mean, I haven't raced one of the races since 2014, but we go back every year to spend time with the community. And now I describe UTMB today, 20 years later. It went from this small grassroots event with a crazy 9 people that had the crazy idea to run around the Mont Blanc, and just 67 that made it, to now, I think, 7 races, right? Am I right? 7?
Yeah.
With roughly, let's just say, around 10,000 runners. It's now the largest event week in the entire Chamonix Valley, but really all of the adjoining areas as well. And I like to compare it as sort of a hybrid of Burning Man meets an outdoor industry trade show like ISPO or OR, and the Tour de France, all wrapped into one event. And it's incredible. It's really incredible if you haven't ever, so I guess my question is, how have you preserved the essence of what you created that first year in now what is the biggest trail running festival in the world?
It's not easy, to be honest. We try to keep values, but sometimes we need to find some rules and to keep, to continue to speak with everybody, to be able to know that we are not the king or the queen of everything, and maybe sometimes we are able to make some mistake, and to try to follow the time, because in 2003 the things were very different than now, and we need to adapt to the different moments. And sometimes a lot of person became upset, and they just need to say why, and we can think about and maybe change something if they are more clever than us. I think it's the best way is to be able to listen, to think, and to share with many people, and not to be just I decide what I want. No, never. It's okay.
Michel, what do you feel like is?
The question is that we started this adventure. We started as volunteers, but as time was going on in the end of 2002 and beginning of 2003, we saw that it was going to be a big thing. It was not obvious to imagine what big thing it is right now, but we knew that it was going to be a big thing, and we wanted to make it a big thing. And so we made the decision at the end of 2003, after the first edition, we made the decision to organize ourselves, creating an association, a non-profit association, for gathering the volunteers, for charity reasons, for many things. We needed to have this non-profit association. At the same time, we created also a little company, Ultra-Trail du Mont-Blanc, the former name of UTMB Group now. And because we knew also that another guy in Chamonix organizing an motor event in Chamonix was organized like this, with a non-profit and a company. And so we really wanted, since 2004, we really wanted to develop the event, and at the same time to keep the values, as said by Catherine. And no, it's not obvious. It's not obvious to do it. You can stay small, and then it's quite easy to keep the values. But if you want to the event to grow up and to keep the values, it's always like on a big mountain. You are on the edge, and you need to follow the edge. If you make a little bit too on the left, you fall in France. A little bit on the right.
It's like going off the top of the Guido-Medi, going down the ridge.
And it's not easy to follow this edge, but we tried for 20 years to do it, and here we are.
Well, you've created an event now that's one of the most high demand group of races in the world, and because of that, you evolved how you qualify, how people have access to the race. And that evolved over the years with distance qualifiers to a process of points, to a process that included the UTWT, to now where we are today with the UTMB World Series as an access point or an entry point into the lottery system for the UTMB finals in Chamonix. And maybe I think there's some interest for people out there just to understand, you know, that's a new process, qualification process that's taken, that's been implemented for this year's race. So there was a lot of changes that happened in the last 2 years, but really that has now implemented for the 2023 race year that, and maybe I'll explain it and you can tell me whether we got it right or wrong, okay?
Yes.
So for 2023, for a runner to participate in either the UTMB, the 100-mile race, the CCC, the 100K race, or the OCC, the 50K, 50-ish K race, they would need to run one of the UTMB World Series races and collect a running stone that would enable them to enter into the lottery. And they can, just to be clear, runners can also distance qualify. So to run the UTMB, which is the sort of queen race around the Mont Blanc, that's the 100-mile race. To run the UTMB, you need to have a distance qualifier of 100K or 100 miles. So you don't have to run 100 miles. That was a change made to respect, you know, runners not over racing, and they only need one distance qualifier to gain the distance qualification. And a runner could run a distance qualifier in any one of the 3,000 plus qualifying races that exist around the world. So there's over 3,000, maybe more. You'll correct me when I give the final finish here. But there's over 3,000 races that people can use as a distance qualifier, but every runner would need to run at least one UTMB World Series race to gain, at a minimum, one running stone. And they could, for example, like we have Canyons that's coming up this weekend, they could run their most favorite 100K race somewhere to qualify for a distance qualifier, and then they could run, if they chose, they could run a half marathon at Canyons and get a stone qualifier and enter the lottery that way. Obviously, more stones, you can think of stones like lottery tickets. So the more stones you have, the more likelihood you're going to be selected in the lottery. But is that an accurate description of?
You're a perfect teacher.
Okay. I've got good trainers, good coaches.
Nothing to add. Just what you call the distance qualifier
Yeah.
is the UTMB index. For who knows what is UTMB index, it's exactly our tool for what you call the distance qualifier.
Great.
Only just little things.
Okay.
to add.
Great.
And now, maybe we can add that the race director and the organizer can just say, I would like to be a UTMB index race. It's free of charge. And because I think it's quite important, because before they had to pay, but now it's free of charge and they can announce it.
Okay, great. The other question, and this is just one probably more directed to that comes oftentimes to us or to me about how elites gain entry into the UTMB, and I think to clarify, elites, and this was a lot of races that are incredibly high demand require real transparency, or the community would ask for real transparency. And I think you've worked hard at creating that transparency in your race entry process, both through the World Series events and also through the elite entry process. And now with the elite entries for UTMB, the top 3 runners from a UTMB World Series race, men and women finishers in each of the respective distances that pair to the finals distance, would automatically qualify for that race. So a 50K top 3 runner would correspondingly get into OCC, a 100K runner would correspondingly get into CCC, the race that starts in Courmayeur, and then a 100-mile runner would correspondingly get into UTMB. Would 100K, so the 100K would pair with CCC. Okay, but there are 3 majors, right, which is 1 major on each continent, and a world major goes 10 runners deep. So the same logic, but the top 10 runners would gain access to the corresponding UTMB race.
Just to modify 10 men and 10 girls.
Good correction. 10 men, 10
20.
women. Yeah, 20. You're right. That's absolutely right. And to that point, I think UTMB has at times there have been questions about how do we bring more female runners into the sport of ultra running, and how do we bring more female runners to UTMB. It's sort of interesting if you look at on the one side, UTMB still has a relatively low women's participation rate. I think it's around 10%. You guys can correct me. And even at 10% on 2,500 runners, that makes it one of the biggest women's 100-mile races in the world. I don't know that there's 250 women in any race in the world.
Many American.
Many are American.
Women. We saw that
they're strong.
American women are able
they
to win.
They crush it. They crush it. I think if you add up all the American women, all of the American or all of the women champions, it's the exact opposite of what's gone on the men's side of the race for Americans. There's more American women champions than finishes than any other. So we've got strong women in American ultra running, no question. But I think so to that point, in some of the greatest race finishes ever, I think back to Courtney Dauwalter and Rory Bozio, and of course Chrissy and Lizzie, and it goes on and on. Lizzie was from the UK, but we'll count her as somehow part of.
You adopt her?
Yeah, we'll adopt her.
Okay.
We'll adopt her too. But what are you doing to help bring more women to the races in both World Series and in Chamonix?
I think the problem for the women is not only that they cannot or run. There is 2 things. There is they can be pregnant,
Yep.
and we just
You just launched a new published
pregnant-
pregnancy policy.
pregnancy policy just I think yesterday or today. And but there is one thing we do thanks to Rory Bozio immediately, because in the beginning in 2003 there is no so many girl who ran, and we had 10 men on the podium,
and 5 women.
And the second time Rory came, she said, Catherine, I'm sorry, but I cannot come again, because even if I am the first on the podium, it's not acceptable that there is only 5 women on the podium and 10 men. And they say you are true, Rory, and we change. And it was what I said, sometimes you make mistakes, and you need also to follow the time, because in the beginning there is less women than now. I remember also that we tried also to calculate the arrival, the time of the arrival of the first women, to be sure they have the same kind of celebration than the men. We try to ask the journalists who are here to welcome the first men. They need to stay on the stage to welcome also the women, to have the same recognition. And there is another thing, and about that it will be quite difficult. There is a lot of women in the world who are uncomfortable to run alone in the night and in the mountain. And for them, we are unable to put a light during all the night on the trail. So I don't know exactly what we can do about that. But I remember that Chrissy, for when she won the first year, and it was because of that she spent the night with Michel during the time I wait with Topher and Brandon, his new husband, and the arrival. But she waited each time to find a guide to run with her. So on this, the very long distance, I think it's one of the part of the reason why there is not so many girls and women on the very long distance, where you are obliged to run in the night and maybe alone on a very long distance.
Yeah, things have evolved a lot in UTMB. Certainly, some of the things that we've seen that you've been really active in evolving has been now, on the elite side, on the elite side of your entry process, it's actually a 50-50 process. So on the elite side, when you think of the entire World Series events and all of your process of inviting elites to the race, that's a 50% men, 50% women. And then you're also giving probably the largest platform to runners of any event in the world to tell their story to the media, to the press, and then you're providing literally a week of global television coverage to help create inspiration for those runners that maybe don't know yet that they want to go run UTMB, and they see one of their stars out there crushing it, and they go, I want to do that one day. And I think those are some of the things that you're doing. And oftentimes, we talk a lot about how do we bring more women into the sport. It's not a single event organizer that's responsible for that. It's, yes, the event organizer has a responsibility, brands have a responsibility, and athletes themselves, elite athletes as well, have the responsibility to lift the community up and bring everyone along. And so, much the same way trail running is a community event, building more diversity into the sport is, whether it be gender diversity or ethnic diversity or just cultural diversity, it's a team sport. And the event organizer has a role to play, but so does the athlete, and so do the brands. The brands have a big role to play too, and part of that is creating that inspiration for women runners. And you as you mentioned, Catherine, it's a learning process. It's a journey you're on, and you guys have been quite sort of transparent about it. It's a learning process. We don't always get it right the first time.
And I can just add one thing, is as a woman, I would hate that somebody say, okay, we will give you an advantage because you are not so strong than me. And I would hate that. And when we asked the question to Courtney, she said, but no, I want to beat the men.
Yeah, she and Corinne as well. Most women want to crush all the guys. And oftentimes they do crush all the guys. It's more and more so.
But
Yeah.
There is also one thing, all this question about a fair policy to encourage women to run, a gender equity policy, a pregnancy policy, again for the women. All these things, we have to recognize that here in the US, you are in advance to us in Europe. And that's why some people here in the US can think that we are late. As UTMB, as the leader of the trail running world, we are late, and it is true that we are late. And we are working hard right now, thanks to Chloe. We are speaking with her and all the team. We are working hard to come with good policies. And just to say that the pregnancy policy we launched just 2 days ago is just the beginning of all the policies we'll launch in the coming months.
What's interesting, I think your point is, you may be late, or as you described, Europe is behind, maybe in some of these areas, but most importantly, you're open. You're open to evolving, and I think that's always been what I've experienced with UTMB and with you two as co-founders of the event. I mean, I won't get into the details of the pregnancy policy, but I'd encourage everyone to read it. It's because it really, in many ways, took what is the body of work around pregnancy policies and advanced it, in certain regards, steps forward or beyond. Thinking about pregnancy not just through the lens of a woman having a baby, but through people, couples bringing a new life to the world, whether it be through adoption or whether it be surrogacy or whether it be a male runner or a female runner. And I think those are some of the things that are unique to your policy that I think a lot of other events will look to as they shape their own policies. But maybe for a moment, maybe we open up to the group that's here with any questions anyone's got for Catherine and Michel, or about the event itself. Yeah, okay, that's great. Thanks, Kim. Thanks. So this book here, this is a book that is for pre-sale now, and its author is Doug Meyer. And Doug is an amazing storyteller. He's an American that's living, I think, between France and Switzerland. And he's written several books, by the way. He's written trail running guides to running in Switzerland, trail running guides to running in the Dolomites, and collaborated with Dan and Shanine Patitucci on, I think, a book as well on running in the east side of the Sierras. If any of you love running vacations or runcations and don't know where to go, any of Doug Meyer's books are a must-have guide to going and immediately experiencing the greatest hits of Switzerland or Italy or the east side. So I'd encourage you to get to know Doug, Doug's books, I should say. But he took on a very special project that he's been working on probably for the last year and a half to really bring to life the story of 20 years of UTMB. And it is a book-worthy read because it's just packed with great stories from the earliest days all the way through to today. And I think Doug did a really remarkable job in the book taking a balanced approach and also taking an approach of talking about some of the subjects we talked about today, which was the evolution of the sport, the evolution of UTMB, and that fine knife edge ridge that Michel was talking about is sort of highlighted in here with looking at both sides of that ridge. And so I'd encourage anyone that even has an interest in learning about UTMB or about the sport in general, awesome book to check out. And it's got great pictures in here as well, but a really, really great and fun read with lots of stories from athletes of all continents and all countries. So thanks for that question.
I have a geography question.
Okay.
They say that Jungfrau is like the top of Europe, but it is Mont Blanc, it is Chamonix. How would you say that?
What's your
Jungfrau
Joch?
Yeah.
Yes, so the Jungfrau Joch, I guess I'll answer that one. The Jungfrau Joch is actually in Switzerland, and it's in an area of Switzerland called the Oberalp area, and it's beautiful. It's spectacular. The UTMB actually has a UTMB Eiger. This is on its own an incredible experience. You're in Chamonix, it's a sultry day in August. You know, maybe it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 35, I don't know, Celsius. And you hop on the tram, and in 9 minutes, it's like a vertical tram that just goes straight up a wall. You arrive at the Aiguille de Midi, 12,600 feet. And of course, leave it to the French to put the tram on top of a mountain spire. They could have put it just on a nice top of a hill or top of a glacier, but they put it right on top of a spire. The only way off this spire is to walk down a knife edge ridge where it's 3,000 meters straight back to Chamonix. If you slip, like one small slip, or it's 1,000 meters onto a glacier on the other side. And it's an experience, and that's why this event and running around the Mont Blanc is just such a remarkable experience. You know, we were talking with Tony with a Sony here. Where's Tony? Tony. Yeah, Tony was just saying, you know, he was looking at the book, and he's like, there's just no place you get this anywhere else but the Alps. And it just makes it such a unique experience.
Yes, because when we did it and we think it would be a journey for the runner, because you are able to cross 3 countries, and when you go from France to Italy or from Italy to Switzerland and Switzerland to France, you really see and feel the difference between these 3 countries.
Well, I mean, how many races do you go where one of the obligatory items is like, bring your passport? What? No way, that is totally cool. I mean, for an American, you're like, well, that's unbelievable, you know? But I think for anyone, it's a really fun fact, like, oh, that's one of the mandatory kit. And of course, back in the early days, you know, the pro hack was like, do a photocopy, so because it's a little lighter, you know? But don't get stuck in Switzerland because you might not get back into France, you know, with your photocopied passport. Yeah, Elon.
You both are amazing. Amazing what you guys have done with this race. You as well, Topher. I'm curious, 20 years, 3 countries, so the numbers compared to our races in the US are really astounding. Logistically or operationally, can you speak to some of the challenges of managing that? I mean, your background is not event management, as nice as you made it seem. Like the music store, I don't totally understand how you're able to make it such an incredible event? Were you ever afraid?
It's a great
But
question.
We all during our life, all we did, each page of our own book. There is one thing, we are the spirit of entrepreneur. And that, I think, it helps us to be able to say, okay, we have to do that. We need to be careful to have the quality and to keep everything together and to do it and to accept the risk sometimes because all the time there is some risk and it was not quite exactly the first experience to organize something because before we organized with some other friends, we organized a paragliding event, only 2 or 3 years. But we were really lucky because we were not alone. Everywhere, if we don't know to do something, we find somebody who knows. And we create a great team, and it was because of that, from the beginning, to be able to understand that it's not a shame if you don't know to do something. The best is to recognize that there is somebody who is able to do it very well, and then you learn, and then you work like a team.
I mean, it's a really good question. It's sort of inspiration, I think, to all of us because, you know, you had a totally different life. I mean, you were like running a music store and hosting 10,000 people every year is a totally different experience. I mean, from my observation, you know, getting to know you two, but also how you operate is you had such a purity of your vision, though, as well, and you know, oftentimes you get a lot of feedback from others, and of course you want to accept that, but you were also very clear on always preserving the vision of the event. But to your point, bringing in people from outside that could help you learn along the way.
Yeah. For example, he's one of the first.
Absolutely. But we had the chance to manage an IT company with 30 people. It was not a very big company, but 30 people to manage. I think without this experience, it was not possible for us to imagine the way to organize UTMB. So it was it has been part of.
Was that before the music store?
Yeah, we began.
And you studied basically IT or
managed,
computer science in college.
Yeah, and then I wanted to live in Chamonix. Catherine agreed to move from Grenoble to Chamonix, but at that time it was 79. No computer in Chamonix at all at that time.
Different IT then, yeah.
So that's why we began our life by opening this record store, and after that it was time to move back in IT and to create this company, and this has been the very good experience. Then to jump after that in the organization of UTMB. And to give you an idea, UTMB Mont-Blanc, as it is now with 10,000 runners, it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job for 15 people. Give you an idea of what kind
15
of job.
or 50?
15.
15, okay.
1-5 for Mont-Blanc. And
Yeah.
50 in France in UTMB group, but for UTMB World Series purpose.
One more small number. How many volunteers during the week?
2,500 now.
2,500.
But to be honest, the average of volunteers per runner is better on the Western States.
Really?
Ah, you are a lot on the Western States. I think you have
we'll call that a friendly rivalry. Okay. Yeah.
three volunteers for one runner, I think.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do the math on that later. Yeah, yeah. The one thing I will say with your IT background is the UTMB index is an incredible predictor of performance outside of, if you're going to join Free Trails fantasy, fantasy picks and try to win, the best place to start is with the UTMB index. And part of that is, this is like a, Sean might like, not only predictor of performance, but it's the fairest way to look at all of the global trail running races and apply a mathematical or scientific approach to an incredibly subjective and difficult set of inputs or criteria. And so we can't talk about that now because it would take, it's complicated.
We have time if you want.
Yeah.
I know, but in the same time we were not alone. And for the beginning, as you say, thanks to my daughter and his husband, her husband, who were IT engineer also, immediately they create for me a website, and immediately I was able to register the person. Of course, a lot of them, they send an application, and as soon as it was very long to understand the name. So the year after, I have the possibility to propose registration by online. And as soon as we needed to organize something, we were used to make algorithm, and it was easy to study the case and to ask to have an application. So I recognize that help.
Great.
Not only our brain, just some help,
Great. But yeah, Ted.
Yeah.
You'll be at Canyons. Yeah, and you'll be at Canyons next week. And just to clarify, so Canyons is a world major next week. So it's going to be the top 10 men and top 10 women from each of the different races: the 50K, the 100K, and the 100-miler. And then the next UTMB World Series race in the U.S. will be Speed Goat in Utah, right? Oh, sorry, Western States. Western States.
He forgets.
Yeah, Western States, small memory. Yeah, lapse. Western States, Speed Goat, and then Grindstone is a new race on the East Coast. It's a beast of a race. Clark Zeeland is the race director there, I think, still, and a great option for people living on the eastern side of the U.S. And then you just had the inaugural Desert Rats race last week, right?
Right.
Great. Kim, did you have a question?
Well, the event itself is always incredible, but another thing that is, you guys have done an incredible job is the live TV coverage of the events. I think that was going to be quite remarkable, and I know a lot of people tune into that. Maybe you can talk a little bit of how that's developed.
Some years ago with another friend, Fabrice Perrin,
Yeah.
we imagine what can we do better than the tracking with live trail, because we created live trail, and how can we imagine to have also some images, and we used some performance possibilities to use the data with live trail. We use it to extend to make this kind of following the runners with images. the idea was not to create a story and to be able to mix, not only to follow some runners and to see their shoes and their the semelles, just that. It was the idea to propose, like on Tour de France, a visit also to the families were all over the sea, and sometimes if you are, I remember that your father, Topher, follow you very, he was, he don't miss a minute.
No, he wouldn't miss us. That's true. That's true.
And in this case, you have a lot of person who discover to follow their relevant on the race with light trail, and the idea was to propose just in the same way to then access to the images and to find with some person who comment with the speakers in many language, and also the possibility to have some very good athletes who follow the runners. Often they are runners themselves. Always,
yeah.
Like or some are with a mountain bike or everything necessary, because on the trails you need to use this that. And we mixed together the images to follow the elite, to show what happened, with sometimes some news reporting of what happened before, because when you arrive in the middle of the race you don't understand what happened, so we have some short moment to give news and to explain what happened, and that's all.
Yeah, I mean it's remarkable technologically. Obviously, use a lot of cellular technology, and then the actual the mounted rigs, you know, led the way in terms of how people are following the race. As, like you said, it's like watching a Tour de France bicycle race, but in trail running, and you know that not only is building the sport of trail running, inspiring people with the background, but it's also giving runners a larger platform to build both career and lifestyle around the sport with brands, and so I think that's a great and it allows people like my dad, who is not able to be there physically with you, to be there physically with you and feel it, and that's really cool. And I would just sort of to close out, because I think we're sort of wrapping things up. I would just say, and it was sort of a remarkable moment for me with UTMB. I had my brother Tim, who you know, was over, and his son was racing one of the races, and he was in Chamonix, first year ever for him being to a UTMB race, and it was the second day of UTMB, and you know, he was watching runners. So this is like 40 hours into UTMB, and he's watching runners coming down, you know, just coming down the streets of Chamonix, and they're just, you know, the crowds are going crazy and the runners are going crazy, and he's like, I don't get it. Like, everyone, it looks like they've won the race. And I said, you know, that's ultra running to a perfection, and I think you bring that feeling to every runner. The final finisher, you know, I go back, if you've been to a UTMB award ceremony, yes, it's honoring the top 10. It's also bringing across the stage the final finishers and celebrating those final finishers. And I think that's a really powerful element that you've brought into UTMB and maintained. We talk about like what's been maintained through all the years. That sense of accomplishment and a changed life. You come back, you know, to Chamonix, a changed person, And I was looking here at the name of the book, The Race That Changed Running. It could also be the inside story of UTMB. It could also be the race that changed my life, because any runner that's run UTMB or many 100-mile races feels the same. So thank you for what you have created, and thank you for the first 20 years of UTMB, and I think it's just the beginning.
And I return you thank you to be with us from the beginning.
Right on. Well, cool. Well, we're gonna thank you. All right. Fun. All right. Well.